I'm here with Bill Payne. Bill is GM of CRM and Industries Managed Business Process Services, IBM Global. Bill, you've just taken part in the G8 panel here in Edinburgh as part of Shared Services and Outsourcing Week UK. Thank you for taking the time to speak to us. Bill, a lot of questions were put to your panel, which consisted of some of the leading outsourcing providers in the market today. One of the comments that came up again and again is that you're really hardly scratching the surface in relation to labour arbitrage or automation. Could you comment on this?
Yeah, of course. It seems a very short while since the SSON in Orlando, and it's interesting to see the contrast between the US and the European view on this. I think this, and let me just characterise that first of all, that the US thinking to that conference to me, which was much more about what more can we do, can we move faster, can we take more process, can we automate more, can we drive efficiency faster. And I got the sense somewhere along in this conference, and especially from the panel discussion, was that Europe is continuing to go more slowly. So when I said about are we barely scratching the surface of BPO, I'm thinking that the industry is still very young. You know, we talked on the panel quite extensively about the fact that really it's 5 to 7 years old. We've picked off some of the easier processes in finance and HR and in call centres and CRM and some of the industry verticals. But more and more we're seeing customers coming and saying, well, actually things that were previously the crown jewels, the core processes, actually aren't core at all. If someone else can operate them better at a higher quality with better skills at a different location at lower cost, then we should take that much further. So my view is that you're looking, how do you measure it? I don't know. But if you're looking at a small glass full of process that we've already done, then actually the potential market is the building size. And I think, it was interesting. One of the questions was around about the maturity of the market and actually questioning whether it's going to stagnate. And I actually look at that in a different way. I think it's an experienced market, but very immature in the sense it's only 5 to 7 years old. And I think in 10 years' time, we'll still be sitting looking at new processes to handle, new processes to optimize, new globalization thinking, and new automation techniques as well.
And Bill, on that, in terms of services delivery, given the labour opportunities domestically or in the mature markets compared to some of the newer markets, how do you imagine that companies like IBM will balance the sourcing mix?
Yeah, the sourcing mix is quite an interesting one. I think we talked about this in the US more around what I've called balanced shoring. And the US market is much more now around, not just around offshoring or global sourcing to Asia, but it's also more a little bit about nearshoring and actually onshore America and at-home agents. And I think Europe's coming round to that view. You get a much more balanced approach, where some of the labour, for whatever reason, it may be political, it may be experience-wise, it may be control-based, is kept nearer to home, if you like. The issue that you have, though, is that labour arbitrage isn't going to go away. And it's not going to go away for a whole bunch of reasons. We were talking earlier on the panel about the fact that even if the Indian market inflates at 15% per year, it's still going to take another 10 years to get the average cost up to the current gap of 50% with Europe. It's still a huge gap. And what you're getting all the time is, as new emerging countries work out that the market is now global. This is a global world. Well, I'm British and I sit in the UK and I spend too much time on aeroplanes. I see it from the Asian point of view, I see it from the emerging markets, I see it from the Americas point of view. Yeah. There are new countries hungry for work. And they're hungrier than some of the developed markets are in some cases. That they're changing their education systems, they're producing graduates that are ready to work, they're producing very high quality skills at much reduced cost. And there's some of the skills that we can't get now in the mature markets, so why wouldn't you move the work around? So labour arbitrage is here to stay, there's no doubt about that. We had the discussion about whether you take labour arbitrage first or you put technology in first. There's no right or wrong answer to that, but you use both. But the fact is, people are still going to be moving work around as the world becomes even more global in the next decade.
When we look from a client's perspective, Bill, at results, they want results. Do you feel that some of the results are being limited by the fact that it appears from the conversation in the panel today that a lot of internal management doesn't know how to make the necessary changes to what is the retained shared services organisation.
Yes.
And how could that be different?
It's a really good point. And you know, my theory about this is when you see corporations appointing chief services officers, right, people who are there at board level to drive service efficiency across the whole organisation, you'll start to see some transformational change. I think what you also see is that many organisations are still arranged in towers, they're still arranged by line of business, they're still arranged by country. And management sometimes, I think, loses the will or loses the impetus to drive change through when times get tough. Changing that back to the discussion we had in the US at the US conference, okay, everybody says, well, US is easier, it's one language, it's the same number of states, and it's a common culture. You can argue that, but I think there's many opportunities still in European companies to take a much more, I'm going to use the word aggressive, but I probably mean assertive, view to service standardization and change. I still think that many boards of directors just do not see the opportunity that they have by simplifying and harmonizing services cross-tower, cross-country, cross-region. The enlightened bigger companies do, but I think some of the others are still stuck in a business model that is probably 5 and will increasingly become more than 5 years out of date. Change will happen, and you'd hope that companies would become results-oriented. But I think it will come. You see this in some of the companies that are more enlightened, where there's drive from the top to drive efficiency much more solidly.
Bill, thank you for your time.
No, at all. Pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.